There you go. Ooh. That's how you catch one on a shiner.
All right.
Hey guys, it's Dan with Beyond Headwaters. Dave's on the camera. Say hi, Dave.
Hello.
So what we're doing today is we're doing a little shiner fishing. What we're going to cover today, we're going to cover fishing shiners under a float, free lining shiners, hook sets with circle hooks, because we have to use circle hooks. Remember guys, have to use circle hooks on Headwaters Lake. It's required anytime you're using live bait 3 inches or larger, which is basically all your shiner fishing. How to dehook a deep hook fish.
Yes.
So stay tuned, check out what we got coming for you. I hope you find a lot of good information here. First, we're going to go with the float. Old school stuff, just a regular float. Of course, we're on Headwaters, so we must use a circle hook.
There you go.
And we'll grab a bait and show you how to hook the bait.
Those are big ones.
Big shiners.
Man, big shiners.
Okay.
There you go.
So, we're going to take this circle hook. There's multiple ways you can hook them. I like to hook them through both lips and out the nostril. You can see right there is a nostril.
Take a look.
A little more cartilage there.
Yep.
So I'll take my hook in, and remember the point of the circle hook is kind of pointed back at the shank, so you have to compensate for that. And you're going to feel your way through, and you'll feel a nice soft spot comes right out the nostril. There we go. Okay. Now we're going to slide this guy into the water. We're going to cast him over here along these cattails. And then when I cast it, after I cast it, I'm going to show you how to rig a free line. So another thing that I really like to fish with is a bait runner style reel that has a feature where you can flip a switch and it allows you to pull line off the rod, so you can actually lay the rod down on the deck and it not get pulled off the boat by a fish. Very important. I've had that happen before, and it's unpleasant if you don't get your rod back. So we'll let him cruise around because he's going to swim back in the boat like they normally do, and we're going to grab this. So now same thing, same circle hook, except no float. Now a lot of times I'll use this. I'm just using straight braid today. I really prefer to have a piece of fluorocarbon tied line to my braid when I'm fishing a float. Reason being, you have less tangles. A lot of times these shiners with this very supple braided line, they'll swim all around the float, and it's like they're trying to weave a blanket. I mean, they really make a big mess. So I like the fluorocarbon with the float most times. Free line, that's up to you. So we're just going to go with straight braid.
And then, so why would you use when would you use a float versus a free line?
I use both pretty much every time that I fish, because sometimes the fish are feeding up higher, depending on where I'm fishing. Sometimes the fish are feeding up higher, and other times the fish are feeding down deep. So it gives me an idea, number one, if they're feeding deep or shallow. Usually I catch them doing both. I have found earlier in the morning the fish tend to feed up a little bit more. And my free lining does better later in the morning, later in the day. Also, when I'm fishing areas like this where we have all these cattails here, I want to know where my bait is, and it's hard to know where your bait is when you're free lining in some cases. So that's a couple of the reasons I'll use the floats. The shallower water with really weedy, I typically use more floats. The more open water, deep water, I like the free line. It seems to produce a lot better.
Cool.
So let's get another bait on the free line.
Yep. Again, those are some big boy shiners.
They are. They're wild.
And these are wild shiners. Huh?
Yes, they're wild shiners. Okay, so same thing. I hook them like this. Now you can hook them in the back. These are really big shiners for hooking in the back, in my opinion. And again, I go underneath. I try not to get too deep into the gills, and I don't come out the eye. I'm going to try to feel my way out. See, the tip of the hook is just outside of the nostril, and very gently pull it through. Now I have seen people hold the shiner here and really wrench them trying to pull that through, and if they had a neck, you'd probably break their neck. So I tend to hold him with a finger behind his top of his head, so I don't put a lot of pressure in his gills and things like that. In the water. All right. So behind us we have some more open water. So this is where I'm going to send my free line shiner. Now to cast them, you don't want a really snappy cast, a really sharp cast, because you'll tear the bait off of the hook. So you kind of want to just lob them out there. So again, bait runner style reel. The way I fish a free line shiner is I almost always put my clicker on and I set it on the deck. Now another thing that I do is I make sure I have all of my slack out of the line. Put my clicker on and I set it up just like that on the handle. That way my spool can't drag on the deck. And now I become a line watcher. I'm actually watching my line for bites. Well, you can see that the shiner, when he swims, the line's kind of bouncing. And then when he gets nervous, you'll see your line is really jerking and bouncing around. And then when he gets bit, usually the line jumps. So I become a line watcher with free lining. Now, the reason I set the rod down is, you know, being a guide, a lot of times when a client has the fishing rod in their hand, they tend to want to reel. And they tend to want to reel. Look here.
Look.
I just got bit.
Look at that.
Let's see if he's still there. Sometimes they'll bite it and leave it. So that was a bite. So typically a shiner cannot pull line off the reel by him under his own strength. It looks like he bit him and spit him out. So I'm going to just leave it there, lay it down, and I'm watching the spool, listening for the spool, and I'm watching my line. Now, for maintaining, we're going to pull this guy up because he swam over here into the bushes. All right, here's the thing that it's good to have big shiners. One thing I don't like about big shiners is when you cast them a lot, or when you cast them just about any, they're really wimpy. They'll die very easily. So now we got our float right near the edge. The closer, the better, typically. So I'm going to leave him right in there, and I'm going to set this rod down. I'll check out I'm watching my other rod too. Now I've noticed on our spree line, our line's tight, but not pulling off of the reel. So there may be a fish that's after it. So as I was saying before we were rudely interrupted by a fish, the free line, I like to set the rod down, making sure that my bait runner feature is engaged, because you don't want your rod going off the boat. I've had that happen a couple times recently. But again, the reason I set the rod down is because I recommend that to most of my clients, because they have a tendency to reel. We all do. We got a rod in our hand, we're trying to reel, and it really kind of, in my opinion, messes with the bait too much. I prefer to let the shiner swim kind of freely without me mucking with him, because next thing you know, if you reel a few times, he's at the boat, you got to cast him again, and that leads to dead shiners. The more you cast a shiner, especially the big ones, the quicker they die. All right, I've noticed that this guy here, Dave, on the free line, he's really kind of been swimming kind of strange. I think we have a fish on here, because he was out there, now he's back here.
Okay.
This one's getting a little nervous. Let's see if we got a fish on this one. There we go.
Right.
Oh, he came off. Son of a gun. Oh,
Right by the boat.
Okay, let's see. Now, notice we have a not so lively shiner. I don't know if I should tell all my secrets. Take that dude and throw him back out there. Bass will eat dead shiners, especially on a free line, as long as they're not floating a lot. Let's see, with this feature, I just turn the spool with my finger just to get the tension out of the line, or get the tension into the line.
Something on there.
Oh, we've had a bite.
Oh, got a bite.
So I want to take it easy on them. It's a big shiner. In case it's a small fish, we can give them a little bit of time to eat it. try to set the hook on it.
Let's go. Fish on, fish on, fish on.
Jump.
Oh, nice. Nice fish. How about that? Love it when a plan comes together.
All right.
This doesn't happen too often for us, folks.
There you go. That's how you catch one on a shiner.
All right.
Now we've had 2 bites on the shiner, or on a free line shiner,
one, yeah.
in about 5 minutes. That one's not quite 3 pounds. Good sized fish.
Nice size.
It's amazing how the size of fish that would eat a shiner that big.
That's a nice fish.
Real pretty fish, real healthy. I'm gonna send him back. Okay, that's fun. Let's do
Cool.
it again.
So what was that, Dan, that you just sharing with me?
Okay, so what I found with setting hooks on shiners with a circle hook can be difficult. Look at that line jumping there.
Yep.
He's nervous. Anytime that line's really jumping a lot, the fish is nervous. That tells me that there's a predator fish that's around him, so he's getting nervous trying to swim away. So there's 3 things that I've noticed when my clients are fishing. 3 things that I've noticed that you miss a fish almost every time. 1, trying to set the hook in any form would slacken the line. A lot of times you think you're there and you go to set your hook and fish is gone. Almost every time I've ever seen somebody set the hook with slacken the line, they miss them. Number 2, the reel and feel. You get a bite, you know you got a bite, your float's gone or your line's peeling out. And I've watched a lot of people do it. They're reeling, and I'm thinking, okay, when are you going to set the hook? When they finally get to the point where they set the hook, and almost every time they miss the fish. I think the reason being is they're applying pressure to the bait fish that's in the bass's mouth, and the bass is trying to hold on to that. They squeeze it, and I think it may possibly get the head of the bait out of the bass's mouth when they go to set. Oh, look here.
Go. There you go, another one.
All right. I'm gonna let him run a little bit because he's going fast. All right. He's heading for Nashville, I think.
Yeah, he's heading for the open.
All right. I think he's still on there. I still feel a lot of pressure. So I got pressure on him. I'm gonna reel down, pull in, and get a couple cranks.
There you go. Fish on. It's going for the grass there.
Yeah,
I'm back out to the open.
Now he's going to come running by the boat here.
Yep.
It might be bigger than I think. No, he's a little guy. He's rolling out. All right, fella. There we
Go.
Now, he's hooked deep. I'm going to show you how to get that out very easily.
Okay, we got another one. Oh, another bait on.
All right, again, I close the bail, put my bait runner switch on, and a lot of times people set them on the deck, but sometimes it'll put a little pressure on the reel, on the spool, and I don't want the fish to feel it. Oop, wrong way. I don't want the fish to feel it, so I just set it on the handle and just make sure I don't step on it or something like that.
Oh, that one behind us.
He's just tangling. All right, let's pitch this guy back out. I'll cast him over there. go. Now this one, with the way the wind's blowing, I'm gonna have to really watch and try to keep them from going way back in the cattails, but sometimes you want them way back in the cattails. The closer they get, usually the faster they get bit. So now I'm watching my free line shiner, I'm watching my float. And here's some other tips for catching a lot of numbers, depending on how much bait you have. So if you have ample amount of bait, the more bait you have in the water, the more fish you're probably going to catch. What I've found on many occasions, almost every time I have a shiner trip, I'll get a bite on one, and within 30 seconds, another angler will get bit on another rod. So I've run as much as 5 rods at one time, 2-3 guys in the boat where we can keep up with them. I had a trip this morning that it was just kind of mayhem there for a little while because the fish were just starting to fire, and they're biting here, they're biting over here. And I think what's happening is those fish are hearing or feeling or seeing the other fish feed, and it gets them excited. So when they see your other bait, they're going to bite it. So that's another thing to catch more fish, is to have more than one bait in the water if you have an ample amount of bait. So this morning I had a 4-hour trip with 2 guys. I got 5 dozen. I basically, if I'm trying to do it a little more economy wise, what I'll do is I'll do a dozen per hour. If we're really going to try to get after it, I know I've been catching a lot of fish, I'll suggest a larger quantity of bait. Now for your free line shiners, something as you saw there, I picked up the rod and I checked it. I noticed there's slack in the line, and it had not changed in a little while, and I can either roll my spool or pick it up and reel it. Okay, but I'm watching my line to try to keep a good visual reference of what the fish is actually doing. So if the fish hasn't moved, your bait hasn't moved in a long time, I would suggest just picking up the rod and gently moving with your rod tip, because a lot of times he'll be stuck in some hydrilla or some form of grass there. And the reason I say gently, in case the fish has him in his mouth, you don't want that fish to feel you. So I'll move him. Now I'm not going to pick him up and reel him all the way, I'm just going to move him. And a lot of times after you move a bait that's been sitting, say 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 minutes, he almost immediately gets hit. I'm not sure why that is. I think maybe the fish know he's there, they just can't see him, so when he pops out of the grass, he gets eaten. Now, if you don't have a bait runner style reel, you can either use a bait caster or you can use a regular spinning reel. I'm using spinning reels. They seem to function pretty easy for my live bait fishing, and all anglers can use a spinning rod. So what you can do if you don't have a bait runner style reel, same thing with a free line. What I'll do, we're going to pretend I don't have it. A lot of times I'll take a pair of pliers or something to weight the line, and I'm going to set those pliers on top of my line. And the reason I'm doing that is because with the, I don't know if we can see it in the shadow here, let's see it right there in the sun, I'll just set the pliers on top so there's a tiny bit of tension to where the wind cannot blow the line off the reel, or if you're around current, the current won't pull that line off of the reel. Because when that starts to happen, next thing you know, you got a mile of line out, and it's hard to deal with all this line in the water. So that's a tip of how I like to do it. It could be a pair of pliers, it could be a small Plano box, anything like that. Oh, look at this.
I'm a little nervous there.
I saw the rod tip jump. So let's check it. The key is making sure if you have a bite, you don't close this bail and pick it up, because it can flip your pliers over the side of the boat. Don't ask me how I know that. All right, look at this. So my line is way back here underneath the boat, and I cast it way out. So. It was just the bait. He swam all the way back to the boat. Cast him back out. Yeah, so remember not to throw your pliers in the water. But that's a good tip. Well, here we got some activity here on this float, Dave.
Yep.
You pulled him down and he spit him back out. What's going on there?
Oh, ooh.
You want this one, Dave?
Sure.
All right, he's going back in there. Just when you get on him, hook him, and just don't give him any slack. Go, pull, pull, pull. Don't stop pulling until he's out. Keep going, keep going.
Woo.
Come on, he's still there. He comes.
There he is. Got him out. Come on, baby.
Nice. There you go. There we go. There's your fish, sir.
Right. Great techniques, and as you can see, very effective both ways. Little bass. Thanks, kid. Put him back in the pool.
That's how you do it.
Off he went.
That was a cool explosion.
And the bait's still back and alive.
Yeah, barely alive. Barely alive, and his face is all torn up. So now I'll give you this back, Dave. I'm gonna grab a fresh bait. Now typically, guys, what I'll do with these shiners, I don't just pitch him over. You can if you want to, but I throw them back in the well to use later. So another tip, when I'm fishing floats, I want the most lively shiner I can possibly get. Now the reason I put that shiner back in the bait well is that he can be used in a different way. This one, his nose is already a little torn up. There we go. Now, I can catch bass, and regularly do, basically every trip that I'm fishing shiners. If I'm doing any kind of free lining at all, I can catch fish on dead bait. Try it, you'll see. All right, we got that go out now. You saw when this bait doesn't look too happy to be where he is. Looks pretty wimpy. So you saw when that fish was, the bait was getting nervous. We could tell by the float bouncing around, and I'd seen it before he was on camera. It popped under, and then when the shiner swam and trying to swim to cover, well, those bass are in that cover, and he got slammed. And Dave drug him out of there. Now that fish was probably what do you think, 8 feet back into that stuff?
He went way back in there.
So another thing is when you're fishing cattails like this, when you hook that fish, you get him coming and don't stop. Because if you stop and he wraps around the cattails, he's basically gone. So you got to really horse him. That's why I use at least 30-pound test braid for this technique. You can go all the way up to 65, and it's not going to hurt a thing. And it may be better for you to do that. I think this is our shiner right here next to the boat. Saw him shining down there. Now let's see. This shiner, he's still alive. He's not doing all that great.
Oh, seagulls. Hey.
Birds and bass. We catch birds and bass. That happens pretty frequently. If you got a bait that, like anytime you have a dead bait, you're likely to have problems with that. So now, we're down to our last 2 baits. This bait's looking pretty wimpy, and I can see this one is floating over here. So I'm going to show you what I do with them. I seldom catch fish with a dead bait under a float. They typically, the shiner is up high in the water column, or floating on the surface really. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this float off of here. If I can get the stopper out. There's one. Now, let's set this guy in the water and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Throw him in the water. shiner, he's still a little bit alive. But notice, he's just floating. He's floating belly up. And if he'll sink, I'll send him out like he is. But as you can see, he's floating. He's basically dead. So, inside these baits is an air bladder. And then that's why he's floating. God gave him an air bladder so they can change they can be neutrally buoyant. That's why divers wear the thing called a BC, a buoyancy compensator, so they can swim down in the water, not float back up and not sink to the bottom. So what you have to do is you have to get that air bladder out of the fish. Bigger you want.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
I'm going to try to pop this air bladder here and not drop them in the lake. So again, I'm kind of holding them here behind the fin. I'm holding them really firmly, and I'm going to pinch and slide my fingers up his belly here. And sometimes it'll pop the whole thing out. But these big ones are really tough. There it goes. There's the air bladder right there. So now this shiner's going to sink. Now if you'll notice, this one we used before, his lips are all busted up. You can't hook him in the head or in the mouth. So what I'll do, it's kind of tough on these big shiners because he's so big, but I'll hook him right behind the dorsal here where there's some meaty part. Hope my hook's big enough, and then I'm going to send him out there. All right, let's cast this dude out. There we go. There's that one. Let's try this guy. Still doing okay. He's just down there floating around. Now, I don't know if you guys can see the line, but it's jumping. Yeah. This is a dead shiner. So that shiner ain't swimming. So something's hit him, but he's not, he hasn't, I don't think he has eaten it yet. But he bit the shiner. He hasn't pulled any line off the reel yet. So I'm just gonna wait for a second and just watch. Got a little slack there. I'm gonna pick up a little bit just by rolling the spool just to see. I'm gonna feel it. Pick it up. I'm just gonna gently lift. A lot of times a bass will grab it and he'll swim with it. Usually, almost always does. So I don't think he's on there right now. No, he's definitely not on there. Now I could have left him out there, but I'm going to cast him again. Usually I'll leave him on B. That fish probably bit about the time the thing got to the bottom. So again, I'm just gonna, if I have a bait runner reel, I'm just gonna roll my spool just to pick up the slack. I'm just gonna be a line watcher and listen for the sound of the line being pulled off the rod. Yeah. There we go. We got another fish on. All right.
Hey. Hey.
Hold up. See how he's pulling the line off? You flip that switch, he's gonna be gone. There.
Still pulling. Still pulling.
Open the bail. Let him have some line. You should pull it off.
Here you go.
All right. Flip your switch down. All right. Just go ahead. Close it. If he stops running, hook him. You on there? I think it's... Now, that's probably evidence of most likely a garfish.
Yeah.
A lot of times they'll grab a bait and they'll swim with it, and they have such a, they got a long snout, but their mouth is very small. Yep. So he would have a real hard time swallowing a big shiner like that. So our action has slowed down, guys, because this is our last bait, and he's dead and been dead for a while. So I think we're going to call it. What do you think, Dave?
That's it.
All right, we're done.
Good day.
All right. All right, guys.
So long, everyone.
Hope you get a lot of information out of this for you, and enjoy. Comment below. Let us know what you think, how it works out for you. And it was that a shiner on my head? All right, guys, we'll see you.
Yeah, you got china poop on your head.
Yeah, I've had worse.
See you, everyone.
See you guys.